The wind whistled through the dead grass, rattling the porch boards like old bones. Montana Territory, 1878, endless land, sky too big for comfort and silence thick enough to choke on. Silas McCready sat in a straight-backed chair, boots planted. Like anchors watching the dying sun set fire to the horizon, smoke curled from his pipe. His cattle grazed in the distance, shadows against gold. He didn't notice them anymore. He hadn't noticed much in years. The war had taken most of his hearing in one ear, the right one. His wife took the rest of him when she died, giving birth to a child that never breathed? 5 years ago. Since then, the ranch had become a mausoleum with fence lines. Everything he built, he maintained, repaired, fed, but nothing grew, not in him, not around him. Man could ride all day in any direction and not see another soul. That's how he liked it, but hunger has a way of breaking habits, and even a ghost has to eat. The ad he scribbled on parchment was short and without ceremony. Cook wanted, year-round work. Room provided, immediate hire, no families. He sent it to the town of Cold Springs, a full day's ride west. Then he waited. 2 weeks passed, 3, then came the wagon. He saw the dust first, rising like a snake from the trail. He stood as it approached, rifle leaning against the porch post, not out of threat, just habit. A battered prairie schooner bounced its way up his long dirt road, pulled by a tired mule. The wheels groaned like the wagon wanted to turn around. It stopped 20 yards from the front steps. A woman stepped down. She wore a sun-bleached bonnet and a worn dress patched at the elbows. Her eyes met his green, clear, and unreadable. She didn't smile, didn't flinch. Behind her, 2 boys clambered down. One was maybe 11, all sharp limbs and restless energy. The other was younger, maybe 7, clutching a small sack like it held the world. Silas frowned. He didn't like surprises, and this was 3 of them. You're not what I advertised for, he said. The woman dusted off her dress, then helped her youngest down from the wheel. You wanted a cook, she said plainly. I cook. I clean. I've worked cattle. I don't ask for handouts. He glanced at the boys. I said no families. She stepped closer. These aren't a family. They're mine. Silas didn't respond. She didn't blink. The boys stood silent, trained well enough to stay still in the presence of judgment. You got a name? He asked. Miriam Taylor. You married, Mrs. Taylor? I was. He ran a hand down his beard. I ain't running a boarding house. I didn't come for charity. You said room provided. I can work. You feed us and I'll keep. Your floor's clean and your meal's hot. He stared long and hard. Miriam didn't waver. Neither did the taller boy. The younger hid slightly behind his mother's skirt but didn't cry, didn't fuss. That told Silas more than words. He exhaled slowly as if the decision pained him. 1 night, he muttered. You can stay 1 night. Tomorrow we talk. Miriam gave a single nod, neither grateful nor disappointed. The boys followed her toward the house. Silas didn't move to help. She didn't expect him to. The sun sank behind the hills as the smell of stew filled the house. Silas sat at the head of the table, watching the boys devour their food like starved dogs. Miriam ate slowly, back straight. She didn't speak unless spoken to. The stew was seasoned. The bread warm. He hadn't tasted food like this since before the war. They're well behaved, he said, nodding toward the boys. I raised them to listen first. She replied. The younger one, Samuel, she later said, barely spoke at all. He kept his eyes on his bowl, small hands gripping the spoon like it might disappear. The older one, Jacob, glanced at Silas every now and then with curiosity but didn't interrupt the quiet. Something about him, maybe the posture, or the set of his joy-minded Silas of a younger version of himself, that troubled him more than he cared to admit. After dinner, Silas stepped outside. Stars pierced the indigo sky. A dry wind kicked dust across the porch. He lit his pipe and stared into nothing. Behind him he could hear Miriam tucking the boys into the spare room, when the lightning rolled in. He was still outside, a storm brewed fast and loud. Thunder cracked over the hills, rattling the windows. The horses in the barn grew restless. Then he heard something else, light footsteps in the dark. Jacob. The boy darted from the house toward the wagon, clutching something under his arm. What in God's name are you doing? Silas barked, already on his feet. Jacob froze. Wolf cry echoed far off but close enough to raise every hair on Silas's arms. The boy backed away slowly. From the trees came a flash of eyes. Silas didn't think he moved. One shot. Clean, the wolf dropped mid-pounce, a heap of fur and fang. Jacob stood frozen, eyes wide, shaking. Silas grabbed his shoulder and hauled him inside. What the hell were you doing? He shouted, You! Don't walk out into the dark in these parts. Are you stupid, boy? Jacob flinched. Miriam stepped between them. Don't talk to him like that. He could have died. He was getting his father's coat. He sleeps with it. He didn't mean harm. I don't care. This is my land, my rules. She didn't back down, and we're guests. But if you treat my son like a stray animal again, you'll find your stew burned every night. Silas opened his mouth to argue, then stopped. The silence pressed heavy between them. The boy was crying now, quietly. Miriam held him close, brushing his hair. I don't run a schoolhouse. Silas muttered, and I don't need saving. She replied, He turned without a word, walked out into the storm, and didn't return until the sun rose. Morning brought birdsong and a strange calm. Miriam was in the kitchen again, sleeves rolled up, kneading dough. The boys swept the porch. Silas watched them from the field, hat pulled low. No one said anything about the night before. He didn't tell them to leave. Days passed. Routines emerged, silent but dependable. Miriam cooked, cleaned, mended what she could. Jacob helped with small tasks, carrying water, feeding chickens. Silas showed him how to split kindling. He claimed it was faster than doing it himself, but the boy's smile said otherwise. Samuel didn't speak much, but drew in the dirt outside. Stick in hand, always near, but never in the way. Silas didn't. Know what unsettled him more, the noise of children in his house, or how quickly he began to expect it. Miriam never spoke of her husband. Silas didn't ask. But in the way she stared at the hills before sunset, he could see she'd lost more than she let on. Her eyes were too old for her face. Her hands too steady for someone with no history. One evening, as Silas sat on the porch, he found Jacob beside him, watching the cattle. Are they all yours? The boy asked. Every one, even the ones that run off? If I branded it, it's mine, whether it knows it or not. Jacob thought on that, then asked, You ever lose one? All the time. What do you do? Silas puffed on his pipe. Sometimes you let him go. Sometimes you go fetch him back. Depends on how much you care. The boy nodded. Then, after a beat, my pa tried to fight men who didn't like folks asking for fair pay. They burned down our house. Ma says we're not running. That this is different. Silas didn't know what to say. He only nodded. When the sun dipped low again, Miriam came out with supper. No wolves this time. No shouting. Just quiet chewing, occasional glances, and the unmistakable scent of something rebuilding. Trust. Maybe even the beginning of a kind of peace. That night. Silas left the front door cracked open behind him, and inside Miriam tucked her boys. Into bed with the calm of someone who finally believed she might stay put. Silas didn't know if it was the stew, the silence, or the ghost of something warm that had lingered in the hallway, but for the first time in years, he slept straight. Through until dawn, The days turned dry and still. August lingered hot and quiet on the plains, the kind of silence that made a man's thoughts louder than he liked. The dust clung to the porch rails like it belonged there. Silas rose early, now not from duty, but from habit born anew. The house no longer creaked empty. He could hear the soft rhythm of Miriam's footsteps before the sun was up, her movement in the kitchen as natural as a heartbeat. Jacob woke before dawn too, curious and eager. He asked questions with his hands when words felt too bold. Silas didn't encourage him, but he didn't send him away either. The boy had a hunger for skill, for being useful, for something solid to hold on to. It reminded Silas of himself at that age. Before the war took half his friends and the other half of his soul, one morning as they stood together mending a fence, post that had cracked in the wind, Silas handed Jacob a hammer and gestured toward a split-railed asterisk. You want it to hold, you drive it deep. Not hard clean? Jacob nodded, gripped the hammer, and missed the first swing. The second hit was better. The third stuck clean. Silas didn't praise him, just watched. That was enough for the boy. Miriam watched them through the window. She didn't interfere, didn't hover. She simply observed, folding laundry or stirring beans, letting the world realign itself without forcing it. Samuel stayed close to her. The boy didn't speak unless pressed, and even then only in whispers. He kept to corners and shadows, drawing patterns in the dust with sticks or tracing symbols on the wood with his fingers. Miriam said he was born during thunder, and he never stopped hearing it. She didn't offer more than that, and Silas didn't pry. One evening, after supper, Silas stepped outside to feed the horses. The sun had bled out over the hills, leaving streaks of fire in its wake. As he moved along the barn wall, he heard a rustle that wasn't wind. He reached for his rifle. A man stepped out of the dusk, tall, dark-skinned, with black hair down to his shoulders and a bow strung across his back. The man raised one hand slowly. Your horse is lame, he said. In flat English. Silas didn't lower the rifle. Don't know you, You fell off him yesterday, the man said. I pulled you from the creek bed. Silas remembered the tumble, brief, embarrassing, and painful. He'd hit a gopher hole riding back from the far pasture and taken. A spill hard enough to knock the breath from his lungs. Name's Crow Tallwalker, the man said. I hunt near the canyon. I don't take payment. Silas lowered the rifle a fraction. You always save falling ranchers? Only the slow ones. There was no smile in his voice, but something in his eyes, calm, almost amused. Silas. Wasn't sure if he liked him, but something about Crow felt more honest than most men. Crow stayed that night, said little. Slept outside near the barn without being asked. Miriam made extra bread in the morning and left it near where he sat, sharpening a blade. He nodded once in thanks, eyes never leaving the horizon. Over the next few days, he lingered. Sometimes he helped Jacob set rabbit snares or taught Samuel how to tell direction by the way leaves fluttered. Crow spoke rarely, but when he did, it mattered. He and Silas shared a silent understanding, men who had fought, lost, survived, and now kept mostly to themselves. One evening, as a storm brooded along the hills, a rider came hard and fast down the trail. Silas recognized the dust-caked coat and the blood before the man even dismounted. Jeb, a rancher from 2 valleys over, near enough to call neighbor in these parts. They hit my place, Jeb gasped. 3 of them, masked, took my wife's locket and half my stock. Beat me good. Silas helped him down, Miriam rushing for bandages. Crow stood at a distance, eyes narrow, already scanning the tree line as if the attackers might ride up. Behind them, Jeb gripped Silas's arm with a shaking hand. Said they were heading south? Might have seen your cook's wagon on the trail, asked about a woman with kids. I didn't tell him nothing, I swear. Miriam's eyes darkened. She said nothing, just tightened a strip of cloth around Jeb's ribs. Silas knew that kind of violence. It didn't come alone. It traveled in 3s or 5s. Like a disease, it spread until stopped. That night, after the fire was doused and the children slept, Miriam stood on the porch beside Silas. The wind had shifted. The air carried weight. I should go, she said. You should stay. He replied, if they're looking for me, then you should stay. He repeated, She turned toward him, something in her eyes softening. I've had to run. From too many things. Silas, I'm tired. Asterisk, he didn't speak for a while. Then he said, Tired's a fine reason to stop. The next morning, the ranch changed. Crow began setting traps around the barn. Silas checked the fence lines with a rifle strapped to his back. Jacob asked questions. Too many. Miriam answered the ones Silas didn't. She taught the boys to listen for hoofbeats, to recognize the rhythm of an approaching rider. At night, Crow taught them how to move in silence. It became routine, just like feeding cattle or boiling beans. Preparing for war. 3 days passed. The land held its breath. Silas began noticing small things, how Miriam laughed only when she thought no one was listening, how Jacob walked taller with a hammer in hand, how Samuel had stopped flinching when the wind slammed the door shut. He found a rhythm again, not the kind that came from routine, but from presence. The house had life, voices, breath. The nights weren't as long. He found himself listening for Miriam's footsteps when she came in from the well, not because he was worried, but because they reminded him he wasn't alone. Crow said little as always, but his presence felt permanent, like the hills, unmoving, reliable, dangerous only if you didn't respect them. One evening, Silas found Crow staring at the northern hills. They're close, Crow said. Silas didn't ask how he knew. 3 of them, Crow continued. They follow the river. They wait for the moon. Why wait? Because fear sleeps at night. They like waking it up? Silas didn't respond. He simply walked inside and began loading bullets. That night he sat on the porch long after the others went to bed. The rifle lay across his lap, a bottle near his boot. The moon was full, the kind of light that cut shadows sharp. Miriam joined him after a while, a blanket wrapped around her shoulders. She didn't speak, just sat. I didn't ask for any of this, Silas said eventually. Just wanted someone to cook? She smiled faintly. And I didn't plan to stop. He looked at her then, really looked. She was tired, yes, but not fragile. There was steel in her. Fire that refused to die. Her eyes met his and didn't blink. He wanted to say something. Anything that would explain the way his chest had been tight lately. Not from pain, but from something older. Hope, fear, maybe both. Instead, he said, The boys should sleep in my room tomorrow. Reinforce the walls. She nodded. I already moved them. The next day, the traps were checked twice. Buckets of water lined the house. Rifles were oiled. The barn door was barred. Jacob wanted a gun? Silas told him no. Miriam didn't argue. Silas watched her place a pistol under her mattress. She caught his eye. I'm not afraid of dying, she said. He shook his head. I'm just tired of burying people. The evening came heavy and quiet. Clouds rolled. And low and dark? Thunder grumbled, distant but moving closer. Crow stood by the gate, eyes on the tree line. He said nothing. He didn't need to. Inside, Miriam read to the boys, voice steady. Silas watched her from the hallway, rifle in hand. For a moment, he imagined this life without the war, the pain, the ghosts. He imagined waking up to her voice instead of silence. The moment didn't last long. That night, the wind picked up. The horses in the barn stamped and neighed. Somewhere out in the trees, a hawk screeched. Silas stood at the window, watching. Then he saw it, 3 figures on horseback, still as statues, watching the house from the ridge. They didn't move. Just waited. He gripped the rifle tighter, then looked toward the darkened hallway where Miriam and the boys were fast asleep. He didn't know how this would end, but he knew what was worth protecting.